FOX5 is getting a first look at some materials UNLV gathered from the Tropicana.
Victoria Saha tells us why the university wanted to treasure some of those items that may have turned to dust during the demolition.
As the Tropicana closed its doors, there were 67 years of history that was left behind. History that will now be home to UNLV's library.
Well, history is important, right? And it's the way that we tell our story is based on these sort of pieces of evidence. And having the records from the Tropicana itself will enable historians, scholars, members of the community to better understand the impact that the Tropicana had on the history of Las Vegas.
Sarah Quigley is the director of Special Collections and Archives at UNLV.
The press releases, the brochures, the pamphlets that are out on the table are how the hotel promoted its entertainment offerings.
Way before social media and online buzz, this is how word about the entertainment in Tropicana was spread. From the showgirls to the latest hotel news. You found out about it if you had a pamphlet in your hand.
From the perspective of the people who worked there, who ran the business, and potentially even guests who stayed there.
Though UNLV is just in the beginning stages of collecting things from the hotel, Quigley says it's important for the future generation to know what Tropicana meant to Las Vegas.
It's seen tremendous changes in the city from that sort of mid-century popular culture idea of what Las Vegas was in the 50s and 60s to the growth of mega resorts in the 80s and 90s to what the city is now, a sports capital.
Changes that will be documented and remembered. Victoria Saha, Fox 5 News, local Las Vegas.
The library still has many boxes to go through, but they're waiting to sign an official deed from the hotel. They say anyone is welcome to go in and take a look at what they have collected.